if you're looking for the knowledge and the actual tools that you can use to implement to help your horse not go around overbent and overflexed, you're in the right place watching the right video, y'all, because today I'm going to take you through my exact process to help horses that have either learned to go around overbent because they've been taught that way, or in fact, some horses, in the way that they naturally try to use themselves and finding the answers that we're looking for, they get overbent or overflexed. And at the end of the day, the process that I use to help horses, whether they've been taught by a person or they're going there on their own, is exactly the same. And I'm going to take you through what the problems are, why they are problems, and the actual solution to getting our horses to where they're not overbent and not overflexed. Doesn't matter what discipline you participate. Doesn't matter whether you're a trail rider, a hunter jumper rider, a dressage rider, a western rider, of any of the disciplines, right? Horsemanship is horsemanship at the end of the day. And when we make sure that our horses are not overbent, not overflexed, they have better steering, they are more balanced, and actually we're setting them up for long-term success in terms of their physical health, because we're asking our horses to use themselves in a way that is biomechanically correct, that complements the way that they naturally use themselves. And so we're not setting them up for long-term soundness issues, arthritis, those types of things that can happen if we do too much of something, right? Because too much of anything is a bad thing. So with that being said, let's go ahead. We're gonna get Johnny warmed up here. We're gonna get on today's video. And if you find this video helpful, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you can see videos just like this every single week that we have coming your way to help you along your journey with your horsemanship. So the first thing that we actually need to cover, even before we get on our horse here, is what are we actually going to ride our horse in to fix an overbent or an overflexed situation that we have going on with our horse. And so despite where the horse is at in their education, whether it's a green colt, which is probably already riding around in this piece of tack, or I've got a very finished horse that's much further along in their education, I'm going to take them back to the basics. I'm going to take them back right here to a snaffle bit. This is a mullen mouth snaffle bit. It's an egg butt on the shape, right? You got an egg butt cheek piece, mullen mouth, meaning that it's got a curve to this, and then it's got copper inlays, okay? And so I'm going to take them right back to a snaffle bit, because this bit is meant to use laterally, and you'll see about how I go about using my hands to help this horse find a better posture, how this bit is going to make a lot more sense for this. You could do this in a hackamore, a traditional rawhide hackamore if you wanted to, but the horse certainly needs to be educated in the hackamore. And you need to be very well versed in how to use that. So the most practical thing for all of us to be doing with our horses, though, is to come back, go back to the snaffle. Do not have them in a shank. Do not have them in a tom thumb. None of those things are going to be helpful. The snaffle bit is going to be what you want to use. So the next thing that we need to establish when we go to fixing improper bend and improper flexion is what is the actual difference between bend and flexion, all right? We're not going to get into all the biomechanics here. I've got a lot of other videos that cover those things. But right now, for the sake of this particular video, we're talking about fixing the head and the neck position and the problems that come from that particular part of a horse that doesn't bend and doesn't flex properly. Bend is lateral. Bend is left and right, okay? So if I was gonna ask this horse to bring his head to my left, then I'm bending that horse's head to the left, all right? If I'm gonna ask this horse to vertically flex, okay, then I'm asking that horse to drop his chin and to give his face vertically, all right? And like I said, we're not going to get into all the biomechanics, but we would be asking that horse to come up and down, and ultimately asking that horse to bring his hind end forward, his head down, elevation. So you see the up and down through the body, not just through the head and the neck, all right? So the difference is bend is lateral, flexion is vertical. And with that being said, now we can get into how to fix the bend, because we got to fix that piece first. So before we get into showing you exactly how I want the proper bend to look in my horse, I'm going to show you how we don't want it to look, because that way you understand, is my horse not bending properly? Sometimes it just helps to see it. And so one of the big issues I see with people that are bending their horses, either they're not actually getting their horse to bend at all and the horse is still super stiff, or they're way over bending their horse and it's compromising how the horse is using their body. Okay, and when I say is that what we're going for is that horse to use their entire neck. But I'll show you right now by what I don't want and how it affects the horse's body, because it'll affect the horse's steering, their balance, and all the things that we've already kind of mentioned here. All right. So if I don't want to bend my horse properly, I'm going to bend this horse around and I'm going to have him just like licking on my boot. Okay. And so if I have this horse is not built to be able to bend this far. He shouldn't be bending this far. And you can see when I hold his head here, see how that outside ear is tipped towards the ground? That is an issue, right? This ear closest to you guys is tipped down towards the ground. When that happens, okay, that makes that horse heavy on that outside shoulder. Okay, if I bend him this way and I overbend him, right, and I really crank his nose around here, which some people do with their horses, see how that outside ear is tipped to the ground. The problem is when you do that, you create heaviness in the outside shoulder, but you do more than that, okay? I'm going to take it one thing at a time. When I do this, you notice how this horse is not using his entire neck. You see how he's tipped out here. He's not able to use the top part of his neck here, and he's not engaged. He's not able to engage through his whole body. So I do not want my horses way overbent to where they're not actually using their bodies properly and they're out of balance. All right. That is a big problem, not just at the standstill with these horses, but when we get to riding them and these horses are not balanced in how they bend, they're going to lean through that outside shoulder. All right. So if you go to steer your horse and your horse has been taught to bend and they drop that outside ear like that, when you go to steer your horse, there's a really good chance, and it happens time and time and time again, which is when you go to take this inside rein to ask that horse to follow their nose, that they're going to drift through the outside shoulder. Okay. And we want our horses to stay balanced, to stay together. And the balance starts in the front end and starts in the hind end. All right. So I'm going to go through and show you how we actually want our horses to bend. Some of you guys might be running into the fact that you're like, I think I'm bending my horse and your horse is right here. Okay. That's not bending your horse either. All right. So too much and too little are both not good. All right. We're shooting for somewhere right down the middle where it's not too much and it's not too little, but it's actually biomechanically correct to help these horses use themselves in the way that they were designed to use themselves. And so that it actually compounds and it benefits the horse as we go from a standstill to a walk, to a trot, to a canter, in the more advanced maneuvers or whatever you want to do with your horse. So now let's go ahead and get into how we're actually supposed to bend our horse around. So when we go to actually get our horses bending properly with balance, what we're going to end up resulting is we're going to have horses that steer better. We're going to have horses that are more balanced in how they move. They're going to be stronger, and they're also going to be much easier to ride and enjoy riding. And down the long haul, and I mentioned this to you earlier, is that we're going to have horses that are going to stay sound longer. Okay. And it all starts with an exercise here that I'm going to show with you. And it's not just the exercise itself, it's how you and your horse actually do this exercise to make sure that they are staying balanced in this, because this affects the rest of their body. So you could visualize when you're hanging up a picture in your house and you're using that little tool where you've got the water bubble in the middle and you're trying to make sure, hey, that picture frame is staying nice and level. What I use as a point of reference is, are my horse's ears nice and level? Because we're going to start this at the standstill, but when you go to walk, trot, canter your horse, you want those ears to stay nice and level, because it's a direct correlation to how are they balanced through their shoulders? How are they balanced through the rest of their body? And so many of you guys have seen this is like, hey, this is lateral flexion, right? It's kind of a bastardized exercise a lot of times in the horsemanship world and even in certain disciplines, because it's not done with proper balance enough times. So it's not just what we do, it's how we do it. All right. So if I start with my horse straight out in front of me, and I want you to imagine like a capital letter D. Okay. The straight line of that D is my horse's neck when they're looking nice and straight forward. And then I'm going to take my hand halfway down my rein out to the side and then back to my home base right here, which is right in front of my saddle horn. So I'll slide halfway down here. I'll let my horse itch here for a second, and then slide halfway down and then bring his head back around here. And what I'm looking for, right, is that his ears stay nice and level, okay? And I just bumped him up there. He wants to get a fly off his leg. I'm going to ask him to wait. And I'll wait for him to settle here. And once his mind has settled and he's balanced through his ears, then I will let him out of the lateral flexion, okay? So I'm still just waiting on his mind. There, the mind comes through and he's balanced through his ears, and I'll let him out of that flexion there, okay? And so that part is really important if I really want to develop the mental side of my horse, is to make sure that I'm not just giving to them when they're physically there, but also when they're mentally there at that place as well. So I could bend him to the right here. Again, I'm gonna come out to the side, around, and back. And the reason I'm coming out into the side is I want a lateral bend through. You can see how his neck engages through that side, and I want to see his ears stay nice and level. Okay. Now, a lot of people ask, well, how far around do I bend my horse, or ask my horse to bend their head and their neck? And the length of the distance that you ask them to bend around will really depend on that horse's conformation in their neck. And I'm going to break this down just a little bit more here. I'm waiting for this horse to settle, because you guys can see he's kind of just teetering around, and he's wanting to think about taking his head back. And I want him to settle and wait in this bend, okay? Because later on, we're going to get into flexion, right? And we're in this particular video, we're talking about fixing that flexion, but we need the horse to relax within the work itself, okay? If they're constantly going, I'll give, but I'm thinking about when you're going to release, I'm thinking about when you're going to let me out of it, they're not settling in the actual exercise. So it's really important that we wait for that horse's mind to settle within the bend, all right? Now, we take it a step deeper here. When we're bending our horse's neck, you can see, especially when I took his head to the right, is that we want to see him using the whole length of his neck, right? When this horse doesn't bend properly, they don't use the whole length of their neck. Sometimes they'll just use the base. Sometimes they'll just use the top part of their neck. We want our horse to engage through the whole part of their neck. That way, when we're riding this horse around, if I bend him back here to the right and I have nice balance in the bend that I asked this horse to carry, he's going to have better balance all the way through his body as I go to ride him around. And so I could ask him to walk off here, and as I ask to bend this horse, that he's going to stay more balanced, and he's going to actually stay and follow his nose and have better steering because he's got balance through his ears, you guys. Now, that's what I want you guys to kind of pay attention to, is I just keep him in this small area when I ask him that his ears are staying nice and level, okay? And that's the main thing that we're looking for to build upon, because we don't want to get our horses tipping their nose and doing all this funny stuff, because it's going to affect your steering, their balance, and their physical health down the road. So when we get into fixing a horse that has learned how to bend him properly, or you sometimes have a horse that is learning how to properly bend and they're just not figuring out where they need to be, okay? So what I would end up doing with those particular types of horses is, if they're over bending and they're getting their ears, like I really have to kind of pull on this horse to get him to tip that ear, okay? Because he knows how to bend properly. But if I'm gonna fix that, what I'm gonna do is, as soon as that horse starts to tip their nose, okay, when they start to tip that nose, which means that outside ear falls down, I'm gonna pick straight up, okay? I'm gonna pick straight up on this rein. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna raise the point of reference for balance, okay? I'm gonna lift straight up, because if that nose tips like this, they're falling down. That balance is headed towards the ground in that outside part of their face. And so if he were to do that, then I'd pick straight up and pick that point of reference up, and their head will come up, okay? But what we're looking for is for their ears to start to get nice and level, because when they do this, when they start to tip their head, you'll see OCC1, these first few vertebrae, when they improperly bend, they do not engage that part of their neck properly, okay? So when you can start to see, when I let him have his head back and he's allowed to bend properly through his neck, it changes the way that he engages these first few vertebrae. So I'm gonna pick my rein straight up. If your horse allows you to pick your hand straight up, but then they start to lean and they start to go to sleep and those types of things, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that rein, I'm gonna close my fingers on it like I'm squeezing the water out of a sponge, okay? And then I'm gonna try to put a little bit of a pulsing, like I'm squeezing the water out of it and it's pulsing my hand. That way there's a bit of a vibration going through my rein. I don't initially start on bumping them, but I'll put a little bit of a vibration there and see if that's enough to activate their tongue, activate the hyoid apparatus to soften their mouth so they can find a way to come off that pressure. But if they're zoning out, they're like, la-di-da, I'll just kind of keep pulling and pushing on you here, then I might have to bump them off that pressure. I might have to bump them off the bridle and say, hey, this is not to be leaned on. You need to find a way to operate within it, okay? But I always start out to the side, and if they start to, then I have to pick straight up, then I will pick straight up until when their head comes up, if they're like this and you get them to come up, they're gonna have to start to bring their head back center, okay? And that's exactly what I'm gonna do, is just picking straight up on the reins to help that horse figure out how to stay properly flexed. And when we get in later into fixing a horse that's vertically flexed, you're gonna see how this bends, all this builds together. We're gonna continue the second part of this video in our CAVVY community, which you can jump in and try completely free. I want you to do that because I want you to watch the second part of this video. We're showing you how to help a horse that gets overflexed. We're gonna build on the exact concepts that we discussed in this video, but I'm gonna take you through how to help a horse that gets overflexed at a standstill, as well as when you start to ride that horse, how to help that horse find a much healthier posture when they're riding around. And then you can watch the rest of this video. You can watch hundreds of other videos, whether it's step-by-step training videos or even real raw training videos of me working with real horses that have real issues that maybe you're facing with your particular horse at home. You can go in the CAVVY community, you can try it completely free. I'd love for you to try it out. There's amazing community in addition to all the training videos of people that are just like you and myself, that we value having a deep partnership with our horses, developing real skills to have fun and stay safe, as well as to have purpose behind what we're doing so that we're not just out here just loping circles for no reason. We're actually getting something done and it makes sense. It makes sense to our horses. So with that being said, y'all, I really appreciate you watching this YouTube video. Share with us down in the comments what you took away. Click the link down in the description to start your free trial in the CAVVY community, and we'll see you guys next time.